Walt Disney CEO Bob Chapek has fired Peter Rice, arguably the woke kingmaker at the Disney company. There has been a lot that has gone into this decision. This has been coming for several months. And if you have been watching this channel here on Valiant Renegade for a while, you know back on April 5th that we have discussed this here with our friend WDW PRO from that Park Place, who is joining me here again tonight to do a follow-up on this piece after yesterday's breaking news about Peter Rice. Now, one thing that people need to understand is that there is indeed an ongoing civil war inside Disney for the soul of the company. But we are starting to see what seems to be a turning of the tide. And at this point, it's only a matter of time before Bob Chapek's revenge goes into full swing. Now, this video is a little bit longer than the normal stuff that we do on this channel, of course, with the exception of the last video that WDW PRO and I did. But that is to say that there is a lot of information packed into this. And for those of you that may be new to this channel that have not seen many of our previous videos, I encourage you to watch this all the way through, and for everybody to watch this all the way through, to get a bit of a refresher course on everything that has led us to this point, because there has been, again, a lot that has gone into this. So stay tuned. We're about to get into it because this is the definitive conversation on what's going on with Disney. Here we go. Renegade Online. Well, welcome back, folks. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It is good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks out there that are not yet subscribed to this channel, please do take a moment. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and do, of course, leave a comment before you head out the door today. We've got WDW PRO back, and as we mentioned in the intro, we've got some big Disney news today. We've got something that... certainly, we might have thought as Bob Chapek got his feet back under him, we might start seeing some of these things, but I think it kind of took everybody by a little bit of a shock today how fast this went down. And that is that Peter Rice has been fired. And Peter Rice is, as we will discuss here, you could make the argument very easily that he was one of the kingpins, if perhaps not the kingpin, of woke at Disney. And Chapek apparently has struck back. So, Pro, welcome back aboard. How are you?
Well, it's fantastic to be here once again. Happy to be with you, Mr. Renegade. And can I just say that for those who have been listening and paying attention to both Valiant Renegade, the YouTube channel, as well as that Park Place, this did not come as quite the surprise that some of those Hollywood insiders, put those in quotation marks, right? Those Hollywood insiders may have taken it today. So congratulations to all of you who are listening. You are now officially Hollywood insiders just by being subscribed to Valiant Renegade and coming to that Park Place. Congratulations. We'll be sending you your plaques in the mail at a later date to be announced.
Yeah, indeed, because, you and I talked about this 2 months ago. I went back and pulled up the video today, reposted some screenshots on Twitter. I said, you know what? It was funny. After this news broke, you and I were right here a little over 2 months ago. The video was released on this channel on April 5th, 2022. And we were talking about...
I believe we called it the Disney Civil War. Is that right?
It was indeed the Disney Civil War. And one of the names that was brought up in that Civil War as being a Bob Chapek antithesis was Peter Rice. And we went through some details on Peter Rice, who he was, his connection to such notorious organizations as the Walter Kites Foundation, which we'll talk about here once again for those of you, because we've had a look. I'm going to tell you what, I think when we did that video in April, I want to say I might have had around 6,000 viewers. We are closing in now on 10,000. I said viewers, subscribers. We're closing in on 10,000 subscribers at this point. So we've got a lot of new eyeballs watching these videos. So I think it's worthy to kind of give a brief synopsis on that again, because it's certainly germane to this story today. And I think, as we've discussed before a number of times, with all the machinations that Disney has gone through since this entire self-inflicted wound began back in early March with their public protest of Florida House Bill 1557, the Parental Rights in Education bill, which they have uh, falsely called the "Don't Say Gay" bill, quote unquote. Um, there's been a lot of silence since then from Disney and from their small cabal of employees that did the Disney walkouts, that engaged in a lot of that activity. And it didn't go unnoticed, not only by you and I, but by a lot of folks out there on YouTube and in the social media sphere. That Twitter account has just basically died. Nobody else out there has said anything because the public backlash against what Disney did was so strong. I mean, they had their Disney walkout, which was a handful of people. Then the other side came out in protest of Disney's lamenting, I guess, for lack of better words, of that bill passing. Disney, Bob Chapek was made to come out and apologize for it. And of course, the hostage video, indeed. But at first, if you recall, and as our viewers might recall, Bob Chapek's initial response was, we were disappointed the bill passed. We support all of our employees and all of their personal lifestyle choices. And moving on. I mean, that was Bob Chapek's original response. That was as I've said many times, if you have said many times, that was the real legitimate Bob Chapek response. Then what came after were the hostage videos, where Bob Chapek was put in a corner, which obviously was something he did not want to have happen, but it did. And then after that, when the public backlash came out against Disney, basically where the majority opinion seemed to fall behind Bob Chapek's original stance of, yeah, all that's fine and good, but we are not taking Disney down the political path. Disney is going to be an entertainment company, not a political activist company. And now here we are.
That's right.
So let's talk about it.
So, they had a plan at Disney that Chapek wanted to moderate the company in April. And a tsunami of outrage flowed from the company, from inside the company in March. They used the Florida legislation and the what would become a law to sort of be the catalyst for their anger, the Trojan horse, if you will. But ultimately what they wanted to take down Bob Chapek. Now, the problem is, if you're going to go after the captain of your ship, if you're going to commit the mutiny, you better take him out. And they didn't. And that means that it's rough riding on that ship later on. The reason they didn't take him out is because the earnings report came out and it was solid enough to keep his power with the board, with the shareholders. He's got a vote of confidence. And now what we're seeing is, just like we talked about, remember, nobody else out there was talking about Peter Rice. Nobody else out there was talking about these different moving parts like the Walter Kites Foundation. Most people had no idea what that even was. We were talking about this in April, and people were like, what is that? What are they even talking about? Well, guess what? That was just the preview, the appetizer to where we are today. Mm-hmm. If you don't take out the captain of the ship, he's going to come back out after you. That Disney Civil War is now in the place where Chapek has bided his time. The board have sat in silence. They have allowed all of these sociocultural factions in a singular political direction to get their way, right? So we're doing for the best language I can use on this, we're going full woke, right? And we've got marketing for a little boy's animated movie in Lightyear focused around a lesbian kiss. Whatever you may think of the debates that go around with LGBTQ issues, whatever you may think about Pride Month, whatever you might think about any of that stuff, you probably don't market a little boy's movie using a lesbian kiss, because little boys just tend not to care as much about that as they do about Space Rangers. And so they've let them have their fun, right? Bob Chapek has done the hostage video. They did all that. And so even people like myself, I sat and said, well, my gosh, this man is not cut out for it. He is too tepid. He is too tender and afraid. And, well, it turns out that they had a strategy. And now that it's kind of blown over, now that the tsunami waves have went back out into the sea, now that Disney Walkout, the Twitter organization that was driving those protests, and they, by the way, they messed up and let all of us know they had Disney leadership involved in them. Wonder who that was. But now that they've not posted in well over a month,
2 months,
now it's time. Yeah. That's right. Now it's time to start cracking some eggs. And so it's not just that Peter Rice. And by the way, for everybody out there, we're not talking about a low-level person. Just because you haven't heard of Peter Rice in many places, that doesn't mean that this is not a major player in all of entertainment, not just the Walt Disney Company.
Mm-hmm.
But now that they fired him, it's not just that they fired him, it's how they fired him. Valiant, do you want to share a little bit about that methodology that Bob Chapek used, which was intended directly to say, I'm the big kahuna, and I've been silent long enough?
Indeed. And just real quick for the folks watching, just to bring up, since you mentioned Lightyear, which was actually something I wanted to discuss. I don't want to get too deep into it. It's a movie coming out. It's obviously based on the major character from Toy Story. But what Pro is referencing, in case you didn't see those videos or weren't following this kind of story, we did a video on this again. It's about 2 months ago now. You can go back and find it out, where the gay kiss was back into Lightyear. This was a big thing for Pixar. This was right in the middle of when Disney was going through this Florida House bill back and forth in the media. And there is a scene in Lightyear that was removed by Disney executives because they did not want Lightyear to become a political pawn, because Pixar is not the Pixar that many of you watching out there remember from just even 10 years ago. It is a very, very different company, an incredibly different company. It is now a very, very politically oriented studio. So that was basically that was put back in. This scene of this, as Pro said, this lesbian kiss scene was put back into Lightyear. And I said at the time, I dare Disney, if they're so proud of this, if they're so behind this thing, put it in the trailer.
That's exactly right.
Of course, if you have not seen the trailer, or if you have seen the trailer, especially, you know that sequence is not in there. They have not talked about it since then. It has not come back out in the news media again since early March. It's been 3 months since that story broke, and nothing has been touched about it again. And Lightyear comes out just about 8 days from as we record this. 8 days. And apart from the fact that nobody is talking about during Pride Month that this scene is back in the Lightyear movie, nobody is talking about the Lightyear movie, period. It's not on, just like Miss Marvel, it is not on anybody's radar right now.
You know, you just made a fantastic point.
Yeah.
Just think about that. Have you seen a commercial yet on TV or streaming or anything else that's pointing out that go to the theaters and see the first animated gay kiss in Lightyear? And it's Pride Month. Why are they not doing that?
Yeah, I wonder why. You know, maybe it had something to do with that survey that came out not that long ago that showed which movies are you willing to go see in the theater versus which movies would you rather stay at home to see. And to give you an idea, 52% of the respondents said they would prefer to go see Top Gun Maverick in the theater. I think we all know how that went. It was way higher than 52%. And basically the survey centered around action movies, right? One of the things in that survey that was definitive, though, was the animated children's movies were overwhelmingly the I'd rather just sit at home for this. And Lightyear showed that only 39% of respondents, 39% said that they would go see this movie in the theater. Now, Top Gun Maverick, they got into the theater. They had a good opening weekend, but it wasn't spectacular. But Top Gun Maverick since then has been blowing the doors off of records because of word of mouth. I highly doubt Lightyear is going to get that kind of word of mouth. But that's where Disney is right now. And that kind of leads us into where we are. And that is to say, and the reason we wanted this had to all be set up this way is to give the audience an understanding of what's been going on the last 2 or 3 months in Disney since all of this Florida House bill legislation has happened. Is that at first, Chapek was being bombarded. Bob Chapek was just absolutely being hammered left and right. And I think he actually reached the position where he felt personally in an untenable position. I think, as you and I have discussed, as Cameron Pasha and I have discussed many times, Chapek is a very smart man. He is probably, I think he's still trying to clean house, evidence today that that's happening. But I think he found himself in a bit of a surprise back then when he got sandbagged by some of the people inside Disney, including Peter Rice. And
well, I think he got nervous that I think he and the board became nervous that they were going to lose control of the creatives and that they could actually be damaged product-wise by their young creatives who are straight out of the various woke institutions now who are coming in to do their animation or doing their productions. They got worried that was going to actually affect their production schedule. I think that's
Arts. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Cal Arts and other such low rent institutions out there that produce. I mean, if anybody wants to doubt me, go ahead and Google Cal Arts animation style or Cal Art style and see what I'm talking about. It's some of the worst trash that exists in animation. It's like anything else in modern art, right? Everybody wants to say modern art. Well, it's all about interpretation, which is to say, go ahead and ignore the complete lack of talent and skill, and just judge it emotionally, whatever that means. But that's kind of where that's where this is right now for Disney. And I think,
well, and let's just explain too to the audience that this was very damaging to the company. I mean, this is not just some sort of dramatic thing, right? They actually took some serious damage. For example, they've got the issue going on right now in Florida where the state of Florida and the governor are actively planning how to dissolve the self-governing body that controls Walt Disney World, that gives them supreme control over their property in a way that no other theme park company could ever imagine having. But that's not all. Also, Chapek had brought in his own hire whose sole job was to help the company moderate, right? So to get it out of all of this socio-political stuff. And so Jeff Morrell was the guy who was brought in. Jeff Morrell, after this happened, said, enough of this. I'm walking. I am out. I am done. And he headed for the door. Well, guess what that left Disney with? Jeff Morrell had actually some roots in the Republican Party. So he had the ability to navigate the situation in Florida. When he left, Disney, all they had were Democratic operatives that they had hired in. Well, that does you absolutely no good whatsoever. So that it made the problem exacerbated even more.
Yeah, indeed. And you bring up a good point with Jeff Morrell. Jeff Morrell, they said Jeff Morrell was fired. No, he wasn't. Jeff Morrell walked out. He saw the writing on the wall, which you saw today with Peter Rice, which brings us to where we are. Because again, I know this was a little bit long-winded to get here, but it's super critical because I know we got a lot of new viewers out there. And they need to understand, and I'm sure, probably there's a lot of people watching right now that did not see the reporting that we did 2 and 3 months ago when a lot of this started. And people have walked away, but what happened today was a reckoning. What happened today was revenge by Bob Chapek, because Peter Rice was one of the architects of woke at Disney, one of the architects of everything that went on. And to a lesser degree, or maybe to an equal degree, we've talked about LaTondra Newton, who is the senior vice president of the absolutely worthless and nonsensical division at Disney, as they are at all corporate America. The diversity, inclusion, and whatever.
Oh yeah.
Basically, these are divisions that are designed to do nothing more than to siphon as many tens of millions of dollars out of a company as they possibly can in a shakedown.
So let me make a quick point on that, because you brought up something really, really wise about that one.
Mhm.
Here's the cool thing about that. So Tom Newton is over the DEI program and Reimagine Tomorrow at Disney, right? So you
Yes.
might say, well, why is she not fired? Like, she's the one guiding this Reimagine Tomorrow stuff that got leaked by independent journalist and now activist Christopher Rufo. Okay, and that was so damaging to Disney. I mean, you just can't even calculate the damage that did. Why would you not get rid of her? Well, put aside the fact that it would be damaging for identity politic reasons. Okay, let's put that in its own box for now. We can come back to that later. But you got to think, who can she hire? Okay, she sort of put into the arena of the DEI stuff. So whoever she hires goes into her box, goes into her department, and that's sort of her reach. Okay, and it's powerful. I'm not gonna diminish what Reimagine Tomorrow has in terms of power for reshaping the company and for contending with Chapek. But she can only hire people inside her department. Okay, when we think about Peter Rice, what was he over? He's
Everything.
over exactly everything entertainment, everything creative. He's over Disney Plus. He's over Disney Channel. He's over Hulu. He's over so much stuff. Okay.
Basically, I'll put it this way for the audience. Peter Rice was in charge of general content at Disney. And to put that into layman's terms, what that means is if it's not Lucasfilm and if it's not Marvel and it's not Pixar, it's under Peter Rice. To put it simply.
That's right.
That's what he ran. And that includes everything on Disney channels. That includes ABC, that includes ESPN, that includes every bit of general content program that basically doesn't fall under Marvel Studios, Lucasfilm Studios, Disney Animation, and Pixar. Which
Right.
It sounds like, well, that's the bulk of Disney. No, it really isn't. Not in terms of number of programs, not in terms of the amount of content, not in terms of revenue.
Right.
He was in charge of the everything else, and the everything else at Disney is far more substantial than most people realize. Because when people think of Disney, they think of the big brand names. They don't think of the thousands of other little brands and issues that come in under the Disney banner. That's what he was over.
And so what he was able to do then, because remember, and I know this is complicated, but remember, he's also an outgoing member on the board for the Walter Kitts Foundation, which is one of the most powerful DEI foundations in Hollywood. It has incredible impact. So what he was able to do was he was able to use his power from the Howard Kitts Foundation combined with his massive umbrella at Disney to bring in ideologues,
yes,
people who were true believers in a socio-political belief system, rather than creating solid entertainment that families would like. Right? That's what Chapek wants. Chapek wants family entertainment that makes money. Well, here's Peter Rice, who's not a Chapek guy. Right? Chapek didn't hire him. He came in through a business acquisition, and here he is flooding the company with people that are counterproductive to what Chapek is hired to do.
correct.
So it goes without saying that you would need to get rid of him. So if you're wondering, why did Tom Newton not go? Why did other people not go? Well, Peter Rice is standing there at the floodgate, right? And he's letting tons of people in that are going to be difficult to purge out now.
Yeah, and just I pulled this up on the screen so everybody can see. Just to put this bluntly, the Walter Kitts Foundation is one of the preeminent Marxist organizations in Hollywood. Okay? Anytime you look at an organization like this and forget all the other pretty language like, well, oh, what's wrong with diversity? Well, nothing inherently. What's wrong with inclusion? Nothing inherently. It's that board in the middle that says equity. That is code language on the left for what I just said. It's Marxism. So what this basically is this is one of these organizations that is there to use media, news media, journalism to use entertainment industries to push hard left political agenda messages into all content and programming, not to report or not to offer content, but to force, to drive the narrative in. This is what the Walter Kites Foundation does. And Peter Rice has been a long-serving board member of this organization, and he has been one of the biggest problems at Disney.
And Valiant, here's something that you might not know. The audience will probably love this. So, you've heard about DEI at other companies, and it's a terminology that most people are familiar with. The Walter Kites Foundation actually goes even farther. So what they've got on their website is not the same as what they've recently implemented. So, and one of the things they do is they put out these grading reports for all the companies in Hollywood. And so Hollywood is constantly trying to get a better report with the Walter Kites Foundation. Well, what they're judging now is not just diversity, equity, and inclusion. They have a fourth thing now that they have begun grading the companies on, and that is belonging. So not only does a company have to be diverse, equitable, and inclusive, but they also have to have all of their employees feel that they belong.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just, and how do you quantify that, right? Like, how do you measure that? Exactly. So it's a never ending effort by these companies to climb farther and farther to the left specifically. And by the way, let me say this. If there were major entertainment companies that were pushing far, far, far to the right, I would be disagreeing with that just as much. The problem is, this is all going in one direction right now.
Yeah.
Maybe in 5 years, we'll be doing another show where we're saying, this has all went far, too far to the right. I believe that entertainment needs to be a neutral ground where people can have, the ability to come together despite your differences and enjoy. And by the way, that's what I liked about Top Gun Maverick. So Walter Kites Foundation, not that.
And let's make a clear distinction with Walter Kites and people like Peter Rice real quick. And that is this, is that if there was an overwhelming market demand for certain types of content, regardless of what it was, and a business then reacted to that demand in a natural free market manner and produced content to serve an audience that was willing to pay for it, regardless if you think that that's all the way on this side of the spectrum versus all the way on that side of the spectrum, that's a business decision. What we're talking about here is that these kinds of organizations out there and people like Peter Rice, who Bob Chapek called into his office and spent 7 minutes with him to tell him to pack his shit and go. And that's how it happened, is according to the Hollywood Reporter. That is what the Hollywood Reporter, 7 minutes. Chapek called him in, get out. It was basically the meeting. He had no warning, and it was beautiful. But here's the point. These organizations do not care about what market demand is. They do not care about what people want. Organizations like this are there to manipulate and control. They are there to manipulate regardless of what the market is demanding and force products that they want to build onto the market. And then, and here's the proof positive, we just had it once again this week from the Walt Disney Company, and actually about 2 or 3 weeks ago now, and it's still it's still persisting out there. In order to drive their products into the market and get them out there at a company like Disney, where Peter Rice has been, and the Walt Disney Company just a few weeks ago decides to double down on stupid and start preemptively defending Obi-Wan Kenobi by putting out such stupid media pieces as, well, we basically expect fans to be racists and not like the show because of Moses Ingram. Nobody had seen an episode yet, right? And then they doubled down on it after the show came out, and they kept going into it, bringing up these completely ridiculous stories about people spamming racist messages that Disney or Moses Ingram, to my knowledge to this point, has never put out. She put out 3 or 4 rather innocuous messages, but she said she had hundreds. This is the kind of stuff that people like Walter Kites and Peter Rice are responsible for. This is the kind of stuff they do. Okay? And Bob Chapek apparently, and probably maybe Obi-Wan was part of it, he said enough's enough. Okay? Enough's enough.
We know, Valiant, I had a thought in the car today while I was driving. I was thinking about sort of that deal where they've come out with the Kenobi stuff, where they basically played it like, well, if you don't like it, then you're an ism. And
Exactly.
if you're going to say something negative about it, then you're an ism. So that's sort of a preemptive protection of it that says this is not allowed to be criticized. It's sacred. But my thought about it was, it's really sinister. Like, it goes beyond just being what it is. It's really sinister because I was thinking about James Earl Jones. James Earl Jones has been in Star Wars since the very beginning. He's 90 years old.
Mm-hmm.
When you get to that age, and I'm not saying that he's this way, but we all know that as we get older, sometimes we become susceptible to things that are not true. I would really, really hope that James Earl Jones is not 90 years old hearing about this stuff and thinking, I didn't face this in the 70s. And here, my colleagues of African descent are facing this, and what a horrible world and what a failure we've been. I would hate for him to have that in his mind when it's just flat out untrue. Yes, there are bad people in this world, but you know what? By and large, more and more people every day care about the content of your character rather than superfluous stuff like the color of your skin. And it's just sinister to weaponize that to protect your piece of media from criticism.
Yeah, I don't think James Earl Jones is far too intelligent for this. He's been around too long. I mean, look, nobody complained about James Earl Jones being Darth Vader 40 years ago. Nobody complained about Samuel L. Jackson being Mace Windu. Nobody complained about Sam Jackson being Nick Fury, to my memory. I thought he was fantastic. Nobody complained in more recent years when it came to characters like Carl Weathers, like we talked about the other night. Or how about Giancarlo Esposito playing Moff Gideon, Carl Weathers playing Grief Karga, both in Mandalorian? Nobody complained about. Did anybody complain about Rosario Dawson as a Hispanic woman playing Ahsoka Tano? As soon as she was announced as being cast as Ahsoka, I was beside myself. I loved the casting. So all this stuff about that they're trying to peddle is just ridiculous. And what they don't seem to understand, or what they just don't care about, is when you launch a series by calling your fans racists before the show even launches, because you already apparently fear the response to a poorly written character or bad acting, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. I'm not here to judge the show at this point. I don't care about Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't care. But the point is that that is a bad way to start, and there's no other studios out there doing it. We talked about it the other night, but again, this is the kind of attitude that people like Peter Rice have brought to Disney, and this is the kind of moment that I think Chapek was looking for after all the crap that he's been put through the last couple of months. After things died down, after he managed to silence everybody, after he managed very early on, apparently, to get the board on his side, because, again, like I said before, canceling a contract like this 1 year in out of a 3-year run and having to approve what is assuredly more than a $10 million buyout of this kind of contract. That has to come down from board approval, or at the very least, the executive committee of the board, which consists of Bob Chapek and Susan Arnold, who is the chairman of the Walt Disney Company. So none of this happened with Peter Rice without the express approval and backing of Susan Arnold, and by extension, the board itself. So that's where we are with this. And I know that we got a replacement coming in. And I know some people have some concerns about this replacement, which I understand. She's not anti-woke, but she's also in a contract renewal year, which gives Bob Chapek and Susan Arnold and the board of directors of the Walt Disney Company a very potent amount of leverage over her.
Agreed,
So
100% with you. And real quick, Valley, let me say too, This is actually a pretty smart strategy coming out of Chapek and the board. They've sat quietly and let the dissidents run wild inside the company. At the next earnings call, if it doesn't go the way that shareholders would like, guess who they can blame, right? So now they've actually got an outlet to be able to say, well, we got pulled in a certain direction, and they'll word it the best way possible, but they can use this stuff about Lightyear and this stuff about Kenobi to say, this didn't go so well, and we're going to change strategies. So,
yeah,
not bad.
No, and I think that's a big part of what's going on right now. And of course, Dana Walden, she has her connections, but again, Dana Walden, like many folks out there, she's a Hollywood animal. I doubt that you will find many, if any, Hollywood animals out there that don't have these lefty connections. The difference is, and the question is, for Bob Chapek, for Susan Arnold, and by extension, the board of the Walt Disney Company is the person you're replacing, which again, from a corporate hierarchy standpoint, this was Dana Walden, is, I should say, the natural successor to that position, that Peter Rice held, because she was next in line. She's the most qualified from a business and experience standpoint to take that role and be able to transition very smoothly with exceptionally little lag. The question that people have is, does she then, like Peter Rice, bring in hardcore politics and try to undermine the business of the Walt Disney Company, as Peter Rice tried to undermine the business of the Walt Disney Company? Peter Rice, who was also being heralded and rumored out there by the Hollywood elite as the successor to Bob Chapek, by the same people who were trying to get Bob Chapek fired, or at least not renewed next year in February. I think the question's just been answered. I think that's a big part of why he was canned as well. As Baron Harkonnen said in Dune, never get more popular than the boss unless you intend to sack him. Well, Peter Rice learned the hard way that that's a bad thing, especially when you're a detriment to the company, especially when you're deleterious to the company. You cannot be in this position, because even somebody like, again, as we'll remind everybody, Susan Arnold, who is a member of the LGBTQ community herself, the chairman of the Walt Disney Company, approved this. Just for everybody's own edification out there, in case they missed that point. Now, what happens with Dana Walden? Yet to be seen. But the fact that she's in a contract renewal year, again, affords Disney a tremendous amount of power to basically say, look, we don't care what your political affiliations are. We don't care what you march with or whatever you do in your personal life. But when you're on the clock, when you're representing the Walt Disney Company, this is how it's going to be. You can take it or you can leave it. We don't much care.
Well, you think about it too. Not only do they get the benefits of what you're talking about, but also they get to blunt criticism from the media, because the media really likes Peter Rice. But now, right, Disney has put a prominent woman into this role. So what do? They can't really complain too much because, well, they elevated a feminine voice at Disney. So, ouch.
Exactly. Yeah. And if they have to fire her, you go out there and you hire somebody like Clarence Thomas and then dare him to say anything else.
Sure. Or you negotiate with her.
We can keep going down the strain. Yeah.
Yeah. You negotiate with her so that you can both have a very cordial separating of the ways, right? And she's going on to better things when the contract ends, if they can't come to some sort of agreement. And you can make that very nice and pleasant, as opposed to having Peter Rice there with a multi-year contract, and he's flooding your system with ideologues into the company.
Yeah, Peter Rice is the one who gave agency in terms of production, gave agency to a lot of the quote-unquote woke stuff at Disney. As much as the diversity and inclusion, or whatever BS department they call it, Disney, the waste of money department that is headed by Ton Newton, they can they can yammer and snipe and Karen all they want, without people like Peter Rice sitting in there that actually has authority over production of content. Everything that they scream and ree about doesn't matter. So
That's right.
getting rid of Peter Rice was, I mean, that was the hammer stroke that fell hardest. Again, to use some more Tolkien quotes here, but that was more important. And again, I can't stress enough, they did not wait for his contract to expire. This wasn't a, Gina Carano got fired. No, Gina Carano wasn't fired. They just didn't renew her contract. Peter Rice got fired. Peter Rice, again, got fired. This is an actual firing. He was in the middle of a contract. He got called on the carpet and said, pack your bags and leave in the middle of that contract. They didn't wait for it to come up. They didn't just not renew him. He's gone. He's fired. Big difference.
And they were willing to pay big bucks to get him out of there too, right?
Big bucks, 8 figures.
He still gets his diamond-crusted swimming pools, guys. Don't cry for him too hard. But this was about a message that Bob Chapek wanted to send out. You do not call for somebody this big. And by the way, like we'll talk on this show about Kathleen Kennedy or Kevin Feige. Peter Rice, even though you may not have heard of his name, his firing shook the entire industry, not just
Absolutely.
Disney. This is a big, big guy. And so to not only fire him, but also you have him frog marched into your office. You bring him into your office. You don't send an email, or you don't send a liaison, or you don't contact his representation to say, hey, this is not going to work and we're going to go ahead and start a negotiation. No, you shock the man. You march him into your office. I mean, that is quite the big kahuna play.
Yep. And this is the kind of language that all the Hollywood publications are using. Thunderbolt move, shock, surprise, shaken Hollywood, stunned Hollywood, Hollywood shock. I mean, you can go around and around and around. All these, I mean, this was a baseball bat to the face in Beverly Hills and Hollywood this morning. A baseball bat. Yeah. So, and I mean, and this is Chapek absolutely firing back. And I was hoping this was coming. Like I said, I was getting worried. I mean, I know, there's folks out there that think, well, part of the stuff that happened back in March and April, well, that was Chapek letting this happen. Look, Chapek definitely was caught off guard by that. I don't think the man is clairvoyant. He was caught off guard by that. But I think, as I said originally in some of my videos back then, that I think Chapek, initially at least, played the hand he was dealt very deftly. And then he got backed into a corner. And I think he found himself in a, like I said before, in a very untenable position. And he did what he had to do, of course, maybe not thinking that hostage video that he did with a political gun to his head for the Reimagine Yesterday program at Disney would ever get out. And then along came people like Christopher Rufo. I think that changed the game. I think if that had not come out, we might be having a different conversation today. If Christopher Rufo had not gotten his hands on those videos and put them out, honestly, I think those videos is what
game changer.
It was a game changer. It put Chapek back in the driver's seat, because everybody at that moment saw the amount of insanity and corruption inside that company that Chapek was dealing with as a leftover wasteland from his predecessor, Robert Iger. Because it's Robert Iger who put all of these loons in there, right? It's Robert Iger is who Chapek is still trying to deal with this. And I realize there's people out there that, they're not fans of everything Bob Chapek has done with the parks and all this. I get that. I understand that. And I hear you. I get it. Man's not perfect, but he's not an idiot. I would caution anybody who thinks that.
I think that he was not prepared for the level of animosity he would face from the Iger crew.
True.
And if we think back, a lot of this was initiated by a tweet from Iger, who knew what he was doing, and I'm not sure that he saw that coming. So that's what sort of unraveled all of this and spiraled the Disney company into a civil war, was that the former CEO is out there criticizing the direction of the company. And like you said, once we got to look back behind the curtain, right, like out of Oz, and we started seeing these people talking about agendas for children's programming, let me tell you, you can believe in many different political ideas. But when people start talking about agendas in children's programming, even the people who agree with you are going to say, whoa, 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 whoa. What are you talking about? Agendas in children's programming, right? You're supposed to be doing programming that teaches them their colors and numbers.
Yeah.
What are we doing with this crap?
Yeah. Try teaching children that, well, you can pick what you are biologically or whatever. It's insanity to me. Parents and people out there have gotten fed up with this. And we need more people out here in the social media sphere speaking up, not being afraid, and talking about this kind of stuff. And this thing today should really, and I know it's hard for a lot of folks out there. I know it's hard to look at this and go, well, Chapek's done this and that, and he said this and that. This is why you got to come here. This is why you have to read, watch our channel here on Valiant Renegade. Go read the articles at that Park Place, because we're going to talk about this differently than most other people. And I realize right now, you guys are going to see a lot of things in the media this week about how terrible this is and how rotten Bob Chapek is for firing. I'm reading a new article right now. I don't want to say the name of the website on the air, but I'm reading an article right now from another Hollywood insider, of course, lamenting this and talking about how terrible Chapek is. But this is what we can expect, because Peter Rice was the guy that they were propping up. This is the guy that they were working behind the scenes to replace Bob Chapek with. This is the guy.
That's right. And you can say, in the audience, you can say, well, there's these different opinions, right? So you got Valiant saying this one thing, you got Pro saying this one thing, but these are insiders in these major publications saying this, right? Okay, go look at the track record. Who was talking about this 2 months ago? Who was telling you that Peter Rice was on the opposing side of Bob Chapek 2 months ago? And who was out there telling you something totally different? And, oh, Peter Rice is going to become the CEO because Bob Chapek doesn't know what he's doing and he doesn't have the support of the board. Okay, just go look at the track records and figure out where you need to be to navigate to the future on what's going to happen.
Indeed. And look, we can't promise we're always going to get it right, but we try to stay ahead of the game as best we can, especially, with guys like WDW PRO here to help us out to navigate this and to do these kind of business analytics. But look, this is something that is going to be an ongoing conversation. And this video went a little bit longer than we expected, but you know what? As we went into it, there's just so much to talk about here. And I appreciate the folks watching out there that have stuck around to this point, because I know there's a lot of you out there that really like these long form discussions. So I don't mind having them from time to time, on these kind of topics, because it is a lot to discuss. And again, I ask everybody to remember that we have a lot of new viewers and new subscribers every single day. So sometimes we have to backtrack a little bit and talk about some of the things we've seen before. Well, I'll leave links to all of these previous videos that we have referenced this evening in the description below. I encourage you to go check them out. Check out the Buzz Lightyear video. Check out the Disney Civil War video with myself and WDW PRO from a couple of months ago now, where we first brought up Peter Rice on April 5th talking about this. And that's what's led us here. So this is going to be something interesting to track as an ongoing. And again, Dana Walden, yet to be seen what happens. Again, I know she has her lefty connections and all this. I get all that. Oh, she's just as woke as Peter. Well, I'd take issue with that statement. But
get out the wokeometer.
Yeah, get out the wokeometer. And look, at the end of the day, I don't care. I have friends who are, very conservative. I have friends who are libertarian. I have friends who are very left-wing, some very dear friends I love to death that are very left-wing. Friends I consider like family to me. Hey,
Valiant, you know what that's called? That's called healthy relationships, my friend.
Being normal.
That's right.
Yeah. The point is that the people that I know from these different spectrums, it doesn't impact their day-to-day life. It doesn't impact their job performance. There are people out there that can feel one way or another about something and still do their job. And the job at a company like Disney is to make money. It's like any business out there. Every business is the same business. They're in the money-making business. Now, maybe they make that money in a different way than other businesses. Some might write newspapers. Some do websites. Some make movies. Some cold rolled steel. Some make computer chips, but they're all in the money-making business. And at the end of the day, you can have these differences of opinions. That's fine. Can you do your job? Let's see if Dana Waldron can do her job. And I think that's what right now Susan Arnold and Bob Chapek and the board of Disney are counting on. Hey, have your personal political views. We're totally cool with that. Great. God bless you. Have a good life. But when you show up at the Walt Disney Company, this is what we expect. Okay? We can have shows that include this and that and the other thing. But what we're not going to do is corrupt the corporate culture. We are not going to turn the corporate culture into a political animal that is going to destroy us, because nobody will have jobs at the end of the day. That's the bottom line. Maybe Disney is finally waking up. Maybe Susan Arnold and Bob Chapek are finally wrapping their hands around this. We can only hope they are, but this is a very good first sign. And I think, and Pro, and I'll give you the final word, but I think this is just an opening salvo. Where are you?
That's right. Don't think that this is the end. It does not have to be. They've got some time before the next earnings report, and because of that, they've got some power behind the scenes. If there are other people that need to head out, then Chapek can make that happen. Because right now, getting rid of Peter Rice says to everybody, you can all go, and we will pay whatever it takes to have you go. And so, even if those people are not fired in the way that Peter Rice was, there's some people today and tomorrow and over the next few weeks who are going to be thinking a little bit harder about some of those decisions they've been making recently, and some of those outspoken exclamations that they've been doing with the press, throwing a little bit of dirt in the eyes of Bob Chapek, who now is suddenly resurgent and in as much power as he ever has been. So,
Indeed. Well, we will be following this story, and I'm sure we will have more conversations to come, because, again, this is not a here today, gone tomorrow kind of thing. This is something that is going to be ongoing. So stay tuned here to Valiant Renegade for all the updates. Stay tuned to that Park Place as well for more updates, and we hope to see you next time. And thanks for joining us, everybody, tonight. Till next time, take care.